It is Sunday evening, and it's time to do a live show here on the West Virginia Football Channel on the Voice of College Football. Mark wasn't able to make it this evening, but we were still bound and determined to make this work, and by gosh, we did. If you watched the live show on Golden Bluetooth last night, you'll notice this is the same exact setup. I'm still in West Virginia, so I decided to go with the same setup. This is by far my favorite setup. My brother-in-law, I got to give him another shout out. This would not, I promise you, this would not be possible without him. So, special shout out to my brother-in-law. He made this happen. We will bring Travis on here in a minute. We got a pretty good show for you. Some things we've already talked about, and some things we haven't. If you've already heard some of this stuff, just bear with us. We'll get to the new stuff as well. Let's see who we got in the comments section real quick, though. Jay Glizzy, 1999. Gamecock Chuck and Joey Foster, of course, the OGs, the great supporters of Golden Bluetooth and the voice of college football. We cannot forget about Mark Rogers. He makes this all happen. So even though Mark can't be here, I wanted to say we still appreciate you, bud. Mark, if you don't understand Mark, this guy, I thought I was obsessed with college football. Not compared to Mark Rogers. Mark Rogers, he has the true sickness of college football. He's doing shows every single day. He does pre-recorded and live shows every day. Now, I do pre-recorded every day, but I only have 2 live shows a week, so honestly, I don't know how he does it. And he has so many sub-channels, like the Hurricanes, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan. There's over 20 of them. And then, of course, me and Mark collaborated, and we created the West Virginia channel. Now, the interesting thing I want to mention real quick is whenever we started this channel, usually we came up with a timeline on, when we want to get to 1,000 subscribers. But the thing is, we kind of picked a bad time to get there quickly because this is the off season. So, share these videos out. If you like this content, other people will like it as well, and that's how we can grow this channel and get to 1,000 subscribers and really take off from there. Over on Golden Bluetooth, we're up over 5,000 and still growing. So a lot of hard work. Special shout out to Joey Foster. Y'all don't realize the work that he's put into that channel, so I wanted to thank him real quick. So let's get into the show. We're going to bring on Travis real quick, and we're going to talk some West Virginia football. How's it going, Travis?
Good. How's everything with you, man?
We're good, man. Other than the fact that we kind of frantically put this together because over the weekend everybody was pretty much busy, so we were trying to figure out what kind of duo and what kind of setup we could come up with here. I think we did a good job. I think this is going to be a great show, so I'm glad you could make it on, man, because I think me and you have pretty good chemistry.
I agree. Glad to be here.
So one of the things, now we talked before we got on the show, one of the things we want to talk about is, well, West Virginia fans freaking out about the transfer portal. I've talked about it many, many times on my channel, so we'll kind of rehash this. But the last time we did a live show on this particular channel, it was before Nick Troy Fortune, a starting cornerback from last year's team, entered the transfer portal. What are the vibes you're getting from that reaction?
Well, it's all over the boards and Facebook and Twitter. It's sort of the same gloom and doom, sky is falling sort of scenario. And I will say, this one more than others, sort of it starts to have a cumulative effect in my mind where I understand where people are coming from. I mean, we're at 20 into the portal since the start of the season. That's the August 1st window, and that's a lot. And the fact that what is it, 7 of them have been starters at some point in the last year. Isaiah Esdale was not an every game starter, but he started enough games and was a contributor. Same with Sean Ryan. So I count them in that 7. And you start wondering, like, what's going on? It's 20 guys, but Still, I'm actually writing an article about this right now, and the title is "What Gives with Transfers in Morgantown." And the fact of the matter is, uh, every transfer that is left has had a slightly different reason for it. It's part of the problem that I'm having is that everybody wants this soundbite, right? That's the world that we live in. You want a soundbite. You want one guy you could say that it's his fault, or this is the reason. People want to say it's NIL. People want to say something's wrong with Coach Brown's culture. People want to say something's wrong with the state of West Virginia football. The fact of the matter is, maybe those are true with a couple of people, but it's not the case with all of them. We count in the 20 4 or 5 different walk-ons. Those guys are just guys who didn't have a scholarship, had some time in development with the strength and conditioning team that's this excellent, one of the best in the country at West Virginia. And now they're looking to get their school paid for. And then you've got people like Parker Moore that they found themselves buried on the depth chart, and they wanted to go somewhere where they would not be buried on the depth chart, and that's perfectly fine. Your starters, it's sort of a different question, and that's where people are starting to freak out a little bit. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I can see why they're freaking out, and I'm going to read a comment that Joey Foster just put in the comments section because it kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about. He said, and I was going to talk about Brad Smith because I talked to him about this. Joey said, I asked Brad Smith last night in the Go to Blue Dude live show why he is scaring people with the transfer mess. He said it was true, so I asked him how many of them were Neil Brown recruits. And it's funny, Joey never got an answer. And I've messaged Brad Smith about this, and we all know, if you're a West Virginia fan, you're very familiar with Brad Smith. He likes those clickbaits, and he gets the views. He does what he's supposed to do. But whenever I texted him on a separate note, he said all the players that he talked to personally say it has nothing to do with Neil Brown. So what you're saying, what you just said about different reasons for different people, that's what the fans need to realize. They want to lump all these players that are transferring into the same bucket and say they're all leaving because of Neil Brown, and that is absolutely not true. In fact, that might be the opposite of the truth, according to what Brad Smith said. So I would say it's not a time to panic. They do have different reasons. We're going to have to live with this. The NIL is here to stay. West Virginia is working on, being a contender and a player in the NIL field, but we are a little behind. It might take a minute. Now, the thing that I've been trying to tell West Virginia fans as far as trying to keep them from freaking out, and I kind of mentioned this to you before the show, is it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as these recruits aren't Neil Brown recruits. And you know what? They're not. These recruits that are entering the transfer portal are Dana Holgerson recruits. Now, do I wish that this happened in year 2? Absolutely. This should have happened a while back. So maybe, and this goes into the coaching situation as well. I think Neil Brown's biggest issue, and we saw it last year with Jarrett Deggy, is he's actually too loyal. And he didn't clean house sooner rather than later. Maybe he started Jarrett Deggy too long, although I really didn't have an issue with it because we didn't have many options. And, of course, the coaching staff, he stuck with some of his coaches a little bit too long. So, really, in my opinion, Neil Brown's biggest issue is he's actually too loyal to his guys. He gives them too many chances. I know that sounds kind of harsh because you want to give people a second chance, but starting to give them like a third, fourth, fifth chance, that's when you got to put a stop to it and say, hey, this is not working. That's why I'm glad that Jared Parker is no longer the offensive coordinator. That was not working, but he kept giving him, chances. But at the same time, we didn't have any other option. Graham Harrell is going to help West Virginia's offense so much. So, especially the offensive players that enter the transfer portal, I'm 100% not worried about that. Now, little concerned about the defensive players in the transfer portal, but at the same time, when we transitioned from 2020 to 2021, we lost some big-time players from an elite defense. And guess what? Last year's defense, it wasn't elite, but it was still pretty good. So if you compare the transition from 2020 to 2021 to this transition, 2021 to 2022, I don't think we lost nearly as far as elite players, as many players as we lost in that first round. So I think our defense is going to be fine. I'm not worried about the volume either, because I did some research. Oklahoma's doing the same thing. USC's doing the same thing. But that's why I mentioned earlier that I wish this would have happened in year 2, because that's what's going on at USC and that's what's going on at Oklahoma. New coaches, and they're cleaning house immediately. So that's really my only complaint with Neil Brown, is this should have happened sooner instead of now. We're headed into year 4 of the Neil Brown era.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of things that I've been thinking about, and I'm kind of like sitting here wondering what order do I want to tackle them in. I think the first thing I'll say is that, I mean, you're right about Brad Smith, that he does what he does. He is he is more focused on volume of clicks than he is about the nuances of things. And frankly, I think by his own admission, by whether the thing is 100% true or not. And I'm pretty much the exact opposite. I don't have as big of a following as Brad Smith because I don't like to make clickbait articles, and my articles, the niche that I have carved is, if you want sort of the deeper analysis, the more words, the more verbose stuff, I think that I've carved out a place where I'm one of the better ones in our market. That's like, so that leads me into saying, I just thought about it. I just changed jobs in my career. I'm an attorney, in my day job, and I just changed law firms in November. Since moving down to Atlanta, I had several offers. Several I rejected. Some were going to pay more than the offer that I took. One by a fairly substantial amount. But the reasons that I moved when I did, and the reasons that I moved to the firm that I did, it's not just one. I mean, if I'm completely honest with you, I can't give you a soundbite. I can't give you a one sentence, here's why I left. I mean, I could, and I've got it if I needed it in the back pocket, but it wouldn't be 100% accurate. The reasons I left, there were about 10 of them, and there were about 8 or 9 reasons why I didn't want to leave. And on the whole, you do the balancing. So it's even if you just ask one player, did you leave because you hate Neil Brown? Which is what, somebody like Brad Smith would want to have. And, dozens and hundreds and thousands of our fans would like to have that one thing where we could point to it and say, let's get rid of that problem so that this problem doesn't happen. And that's just not how it works. I mean, any of us who have ever changed jobs or gotten a divorce or broken up with somebody or made any big life change, there's not just a single reason why the life change happened. And we can't expect that the players' decisions are any more simple or any less complex than the reasons that we make decisions. So I can't, with any integrity, I can't put it down to a soundbite and say, here is the reason. There are probably some categories, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Josh Chandler-Samedo, where it's like, fans are, oh my goodness, the sky is falling when he decides to transfer. But frankly, 90% of us were super surprised whenever he said he was going to come back and play in Morgantown next year in the first place. Because whenever he didn't put the decal on his helmet, fans went after him and said, don't bring your politics to the game of football. Leave it alone. So, Chandler Semedo, maybe Kerry Martin would fall into a bucket where maybe their biggest problem was actually the fan base and the vitriol that some in the fan base threw in their direction. Um, Others like, Matthews and Porter and Tyke Smith before him, somebody outside of the program poisoned the well, is most likely the case. And even Chandler Semedo falls into another bucket because his Twitter activity was dollar signs. Why am I not getting this? And there have been several other players who have had similar tweets. So it's not just one thing. It's like I said, guys like Moore who are buried on the depth chart want to go and be featured more. Players like Matthews and some others who maybe want more NIL money. Players like Sean Ryan, who want to be closer to home. Players like Jarrett Dagey, who was asked to leave by 90% of the Mountaineer fan base. Do you really even count him as a number in the transfer portal? Really? Because we asked him to leave.
Yep.
And it's just funny. Everybody wants the 1 second soundbite, and I've obviously given you a few minutes of here's numerous reasons. But I think that has more integrity than just saying, oh, Neil Brown. And even if you interviewed players, right? Like, Brad Smith has, to his credit, tried to talk to multiple players on their exit and has admitted, I've paid some of them to talk to me. But even those players aren't going to give a 100% honest answer. They don't want some newsprint clickbait journalist writing and taking some of their words out of context, because what does it look like at the next program? They need to be professionals too, and if they're being handled by anybody that has any sense, they're being told, don't badmouth the program that you're leaving.
Yeah, that's exactly
and
right.
So we're not going to get that from them.
Yep. I saw a comment in the comment section, Pinhead Larry. He says, I think the reason Neil Brown never forced anyone to leave sooner was due to not having any other options due to joining WVU late, and then the COVID year didn't give him options to replace the original Dana recruits. That's an excellent point. So I mentioned, he was the timing of his hiring maybe, kind of delayed year one. I forgot, I don't know how, but I completely forgot about COVID year, so that would affect year two as well. So that's a good point. I like that. So it just opens your eyes to, and people want to be tunnel visioned. They want one single reason, because it's easier to rationalize something if there's one reason. But the fact of the matter is, with these 20 recruits that have entered the transfer portal and the timing of each person entering the transfer portal, it's different. Each player does not have the same reason for entering the transfer portal. And, I think West Virginia is in really good shape. I'm segueing into JT Daniels real quick. I think West Virginia is in good shape on the receiving end of the transfer portal as well. Speaking about JT Daniels, and I know I'm talking this subject into the ground, but it's an important subject for West Virginia. I think he can be the bridge for West Virginia moving into what I want to call the Nico Markle era, because I truly think that Nico is the future of West Virginia, but I also think there needs to be a bridge, because it's very difficult to throw a true freshman, especially at West Virginia, into the fire and say, all right, turn us around immediately. So the JT factor, as I want to call it, is the bridge that'll get us from where we are now to the Nico Markle era. And, the thing that I like about the JT situation is who we're up against, number one, Missouri and Oregon State. We're not up against, these massive brands. We're up against Missouri, Oregon State. So even right out of the gates, all right, this might be doable. That's a battle that we could win. And then on top of that, JT is a very mature athlete. He doesn't make, crazy decisions, shooting from the hip. So he's going to make a decision that's best for him. And he's running out of time of college eligibility, so he wants to go to a place where he can showcase his abilities immediately and have, the availability of being able to show that on TV. So I think Oregon State, yes, it's closer to home, but he's not going to have the exposure because Oregon State's not a big brand. They're over in the Pac-12. Pac-12 at night, nobody really watches that. So, a lot of people are saying, oh, Oregon State's a big option. I give them about 5%. And then there's Missouri, a little bit higher. He would get to stay in the SEC. Play his former team, Georgia, although he has to know Georgia's going to whoop Missouri even if he's the quarterback. They're just that much better. So does he really want to put himself in that position? And then there's West Virginia. I think he knows that his chances of starting at West Virginia pretty high. Yes, he would have to compete with Nico, but he has the experience and the ace up West Virginia's sleeve, and that's Graham Harrell, the familiarity, knowing the offense that Graham Harrell calls. And then throw in the fact that West Virginia just shoveled a bunch of money into their recovery facility. JT Daniels, he's had issues with injuries his entire career. So when he tours West Virginia, by the way, March 25th to the 27th, you better believe they are going to show him that recovery center and, talk that up, because that's going to be a big deal to JT Daniels because he has been injury prone, and he'll be like, well, West Virginia, they focus on, recovering the athlete after the battle. And that's what he wants to see. He don't want to get injured again. I mean, it's great to have great rehab facilities, but if you can avoid having to go to the rehab facility, that's even better. So I think that's going to work in favor of West Virginia as well. So personally, how do you feel? I know I threw a lot at you real quick, but how do you feel about the JT situation and how it relates to West Virginia?
I like it, and I like our chances a lot more than I did a month and a half ago. I like that we're his last visit. I like that, he obviously has the Graham Harrell connection, so it's, if he's looking for a place, I mean, technically he has 2 years of eligibility left, but he's also in his 5th year as a college athlete. So if you're JT Daniels, preferably you'd show out enough to be able to enter the NFL draft in a good position next year instead of playing 2 more years to do that. In colleges where you're not familiar with the coach or the system, that's not super realistic because it's going to take you about 6 games to get up to speed and learn the signals and understand what it is that you're being asked to do. He knows what Graham Harrell wants him to do. And Graham Harrell knows what he's good at, which is important because when Graham speaks about what his offense is going to look like over and over and over again, he says, in the spring, we're going to find out what we do well, and in the fall, we're going to implement the offense that highlights what we do well. And we're not going to ask players to think too much. We're going to ask them to execute. And JT Daniels already knows how to execute. He has that trust with Graham Harrell. So I like our chances a lot. I think there are good reasons why it makes sense for him. And to your point about sort of, yeah, we've lost some people for sure, and we don't like the volume of losses or some of the names of the losses. But I look at our depth chart, and I really like it. I mean, if we end up with JT Daniels, our offense is, and I'm just, it's JT Daniels, 5-star recruit out of high school. It's Lynn J. Dixon, 4-star recruit out of high school. It's Sam James, Bryce Wheaton, Caden Prather, 4-star recruit out of high school. Mike O'Laughlin, James Gamitter, Brandon Yates, Doug Nestor, 4-star recruit out of high school. Zach Frazier, Wyatt Milam, 4-star recruit out of high school. That's a good offensive starting group. regardless of the losses, that is still a lot of people left to execute a top-notch offense that Graham Harrell's going to bring. And on defense, you're right. So far, it has really not mattered who we've lost. The staff on the defensive side of the ball has been able to adapt and bring enough pressure up front to mask the secondary. And I know in some ways it sounds like after the fact justification, but Nick Troy Fortune was a steady snap getter. He was the best option that we had at the time. But if you look at his PFF grades, he was not a good coverage cornerback.
Exactly.
Somebody is in his ear saying that he can be showcased and highlighted somewhere else, and that's fine. I'm not saying that Nick Troy Fortune is not a good football player. He is. He has things that he's good at. Coverage was not by the professional scouts who grade these games. So what do we have on defense? We already know the defensive line is top-notch because we've got Dante Stills, 4-star recruit out of high school, Taj Alston, Akeem Mesidor, 4-star recruit out of high school, Jordan Jefferson, X3 Love, Lee Kapogba, 4-star recruit, Lance Dixon. 247 Sports actually had him as a 5-star recruit out of high school. Jared Bartlett. What do we have at safety? Safety's the weakest room in the group. Mm-hmm. Hershey McLaurin, though, is a 4-star transfer JUCO recruit. St. McLeod has some experience. I hope that it sounds like he's going to make a full recovery from the incident that he underwent, the unfortunate one a few weeks ago. But there are guys there. And one of my favorite recruits of the last class was Christian Stokes out of Michigan. Only rated a high 3-star, but I think that guy has every bit of mid 4-star written all over him. He is a very hard-hitting safety. And then at cornerback, where we just lost all these guys, depth is an issue, but we run 2 corners, and we have 6 in the room already. So you're 3 deep right there. You're not going to be 3 deep in spring, but you're 3 deep. You've got Charles Woods. Frankly, I thought our secondary looked better when Charles Woods took over Fortune's spot after the injury. Mm-hmm. And Woods was much more of a ball hawk. And then you're going to have Marcus Floyd and Andrew Wilson-Lamp battle out for the other spot. And behind them, we've got 4-star Jacoby Spells, who we picked off out of Miami's backyard, and Mumu Bin Wahad, who's been called the best corner coverage, or the best coverage corner in the state of Georgia, in a class that included the number 1 guy in the country in Travis Hunter. So I think we're still in a very good spot. The secondary is going to be young this year. But at the rest of the team, we're like, I'm not saying that I didn't like these guys. I liked them all. Chandler Samedo was my favorite of the bunch that left. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to miss him some. But I think we've got guys. We've got guys everywhere. And now, to your point earlier, they're Neil Brown's guys.
There you go.
Not Dana's guys. And Dana, lest we forget, every single year we were talking about Dana and the fact that he was unable to retain players for longer than 1 to 2 years. Why do you think that he relied so heavily on JUCO transfers in his recruiting platform? Because he was losing players late in the cycle every year that came to him in the locker room after game 10 or 11 and said, "Coach, I'm not going to be with you next year." And he's got to pivot and get JUCO transfers. The portal wasn't a thing, so it's not tracked as evenly. But Dana was losing 10 to 12 guys every offseason. I would dare somebody to prove me wrong on that point. I just remember it clearly. He was losing guys left and right.
Yeah, you're not wrong. That's exactly why he went the JUCO route. And you said some stuff that I was going to hit on as far as, well, for one thing, I don't understand why people are making a bigger deal about Nick Troy Fortune over Semedo. That, to me, that makes no sense. I thought far and away Semino was the better player. So that kind of confused me. And then they look at, oh, he was a starter. That's what they want to focus on. Yeah, he was a starter, but he also got injured. And then Woods comes in, and the corner position actually looked better. So it's not as a big a deal as people are trying to make it out. And then on top of that, you hit on it, Mumu Ben Wahad and Jacoby Spells. Jacoby Spells is considered the better cover. His recovery speed is a little bit better, but Mumu, he's a top-notch cover corner, borderline 4-star. So this is just me, okay? I honestly don't see a drop-off in the cornerback position. That's one area that I am not worried about at all. Linebackers, that needs to be addressed. But then again, a couple weeks ago, Neil Brown said we will address that. But he wants to address it after spring ball because he's a numbers guy. We all know this. Neil Brown is a numbers guy. And according to the numbers guy, Neil Brown, there's more big-time names after spring practice because people are figuring out where they fit in and where they don't fit in. And that's when he's going to pick up his transfers in the transfer portal is after and spring ball is going on right now, so that's going to start happening in the next few weeks. So you'll see West Virginia target linebackers high end. He said best available. He didn't say, oh, we're going to go just try to plug holes or the crumbs that. No, he said best available. So I anticipate Neil Brown to go after the linebackers first, and then he'll probably solidify that safety position. I'm not, we are going to be young at safety, but I'm with Neil Brown. I'm more worried about that linebacker position and getting that locked down first, because I think we're good at cornerback, and the linebacker, that's that next level before you get to the safety. So we need to solidify that front first, and then we can work on the safeties. I think the more pressing need will be the linebackers. That's exactly what Neil Brown talked about. So it's not like he's ignoring the situation. He knows what's going on. He already knows. This is one thing that people do not realize about Neil Brown. He has steps already planned. All right, so he knows the next step. He knows step 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how far out he goes, but he has these steps already lined out. He knows what he's going to do next. He knows what's coming next. And I don't know, a lot of people have been, kind of wondering about the Jeff Kuntz situation, and, the offensive line was terrible last year. If we retain him, that's part of the plan, but if not, then Neil Brown's just not showing his cards right now. There's one thing I can guarantee about that. Neil Brown has a plan for that as well. Now, whether we like it or not, that remains to be seen. I am concerned about the offensive line. However, all of them are going to be back. They're going to have that extra year of cohesion. And if you looked at last year, they actually got better and better and better after the bye week. That was the pivotal point of our offensive line last year. It was the bye week. They got better every week after that bye week. So, am I, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned am I with the offensive line? I would give it a 5, because I can't totally forget about the games before the bye weeks. There was some big-time issues. But after the bye week, that does knock it down to a 5. I say, okay, they're getting better, and they will be back. So we'll see how that first game goes against Pitt, who has an excellent defensive line. That's going to be a test for West Virginia's offensive line. I can't ignore that fact. I hate Pitt, but I'm not going to lie about them, okay? They have a really good defensive line, and our offensive line is going to get tested. So that's the next segue that I want to go into. How do you feel? What's your feelings about our offensive line going into 2022?
I am not, you say your level of concern is sort of right in the middle, sort of a 5. I would put mine at, lowest level of concern being a 1. I would put mine probably closer to a 3. And the reason is that, as I've talked about, in some articles and on some of our shows, one, Graham Harrell is good at masking deficiency. Two, if you look at the quarterbacks we have, based on what they've shown on film so far, and especially if we get JT Daniels, this proves to true. They all have a quicker release than Jarrett Dagey. Whether they'll, whether the young guys would make better decisions, that has yet to be seen. But they have a quicker release. Three, if we have a righty quarterback, they are testing out through the spring. They're testing Milam out. They're moving him over to left tackle, sliding Yates over to right, and maybe bringing someone in to compete with him, or letting some of the younger guys compete with him for that right tackle spot. So that should improve the line right off the bat, because one of your best blockers, and speaking of guys who developed over the course of the year, Wyatt Milam grew up right in front of our face, after the bye week, and he's going to come back and be top notch. So I'm not as concerned as most fans about the offensive line, and maybe it's blue and gold colored glasses, but that's kind of where I am on it.
Yeah, and that's why I said, before the bye week, my concern was through the roof. I mean, it was like a 8-9. Then after the bye week, that brought it down. I would like to say a 3 with you, and I understand why you say a 3. But I guess my brain can't totally forget about those first games. If we can go into the season and have a good first game against Pitt with their offensive line, then it'll drop significantly, probably down to a 2. So I guess that's just going into hopefully we get that offensive line that we saw after the bye week. But there's a chance, you never know. I don't know, but that's why I put it at a 5. It's definitely not high. It's definitely not high. That's for sure. But I'm tentatively optimistic going into it. Hold on. There was a comment that Joey said. Hold on, let me find it. If I can't find it, I'll paraphrase it. Well, he said, here it is, Joey Foster. He said, that is actually the only thing that scares me about head coach Neil Brown. He micromanages, and I'm not sure you can micromanage a football team. He used to micromanage is how it needs to be phrased. He doesn't micromanage anymore. Now, I know earlier I said steps. That's not micromanaging. That's having a plan. He's come out and admit, and this was last year, I think it was before the end of the season, that he was trying to do too much. He was trying to manage the offense. He was trying to make sure our defense was okay. He was even trying to get a handle on the special teams. But he said, and it looked like he has, especially going out and getting Graham Harrell, that he's learned his lesson. And he literally said, that's the reason why I went after Graham Harrell, because I just want to be the CEO. I've learned that I can't manage every little thing. And he is learning to let it go, and that's why hiring Graham Harrell was a big deal, because Graham Harrell is a proven offensive coordinator. I know people are concerned because USC had a bad season last year, but if you look at the offense was fine. There was a few issues with the red zone offense, but in general, they could move the ball, get first downs. Scoring wasn't that big of an issue. Big plays were pretty good. The offensive line was actually really good. So, now Neil Brown can kind of relax knowing that he has a proven offensive coordinator and could possibly land his former recruit, JT Daniels. So, how do you feel about Neil Brown? Do you think he's learned his lesson and is kind of backing off of micromanaging, or do you think he still has that tendency?
Well, it remains to be seen. I think year 4 of the Dana Holgerson era, a lot of us, including me, were saying the same thing about him, that it seems like Dana Holgerson is micromanaging the team, taking too many things on, and that's when he finally hired an offensive coordinator, and let him take over some of the responsibilities that Dana had on his plate. Neil Brown has done that a year earlier. And whether he does indeed let go of the reins as much as he has had control over them, remains to be seen. But I'm certainly optimistic that he has. In his commentary in the offseason leads me to believe the same thing that you do, that it looks like he has very much learned his lesson. He's at least saying the right things there. And if he does, it will be reason to believe that this team can and should improve going into next season.
Yes. You know, as much as I'm going back to the quarterback situation real quick. As much as I defended Jarrett Day, he definitely had an issue with getting the ball out of his hands. And quite frankly, one of his biggest flaws was a simple fix: throwing the ball away. For whatever reason, Jarrett Daggy, when he couldn't make the reads, he he didn't want to throw the ball away. So as far as our offense goes, I think we will have a massive upgrade at quarterback. Whether it's Crowder, which Graham Harrell is actually pretty high on Crowder. I didn't hear much about Crowder at all last year. I thought maybe he left or something. I didn't know what was going on with him. Well, apparently he's actually impressing Graham Harrell. He's got a nice arm, quick release. Then we have Nico Markiel. I know we have Garrett Green, but he needs to learn more patience as well. And that's more tucking and running. He does one read and then he's gone. So, if Graham Harrell can teach him a little more patience before taking off and running, he would actually be a good quarterback as well, because whenever he did have some patience, he actually made some good throws. So maybe he's one big fix away from being a great quarterback. Now, I say big fix because that's a big deal. Patience is a big deal. So we'll see if Graham Harrell can give him a big fix, put him on the right track. But the point is, I think no matter who steps in on day one, he's going to have a better, quicker release than Jarrett Daggy. I think whoever it's going to be will be able to read the field better, and will have the instincts of throwing the ball away much better than Jarrett Daggy did. How do you feel? I know we don't know who's going to start, but I was going to ask you how you feel about the quarterback situation. But one thing real quick, we are having a little bit of video difficulty. If you guys can give us some feedback on that. My brother-in-law is working on it, but right now we can't get it back. So y'all let me know how it is. Like, keep us updated and let us know what's going on. We're working on it on our side, but I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi or just the area we're in. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking the chat section. Brother-in-law says he can take it down and put it back up. So I need the chat section to let us know what's going on real quick. So we need to know what the next step is going to be. We're just having some connection issues. Are y'all seeing us okay? Because we're frozen on our end. I think we're frozen. All right, so, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to reboot this. And, yeah, I'll get a hold of him. What we're going to do is we're going to shut this one down. We're going to reboot it. Like 2 or 3 minutes is what he's saying. So we're going to jump off here. I'll be in contact with Travis, and we'll finish this show up real quick. So y'all hang on. We're going to get off here, and we'll be back on here in just a few minutes. Just wondering when to talk to him again. You there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you hear him? Can you hear him? You there?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, we're working on it.